Okay, so hello and welcome to yet another Gaming Masters video. So today we're going to be playing some of the Division, and we're going to be playing some of the Dark Zone in the Division as well. So today I'm going to be talking about just my opinions of the Dark Zone. So it's been quite a while since the Division fully launched. Which was the beginning of March, we're now at the beginning of June. So it's been quite a long time since the base game at least launched. And there have been numerous patches, there have been numerous fixes, and numerous bits of content that have come to the game. Now, I'm a little bit rusty in the Dark Zone, as you can probably see. I mean, I've not died just yet, but I've come close to death because I've not played a huge amount of it in comparison to some other players. I also sometimes forget to go into cover, which definitely helps. And I just wanted to give an opinion of what I think about the game. Like, after launch, after a few months have passed with server stability pretty much fixed, and also after quite a few new features have come to the Dark Zone and things like that, and they've listened to community feedback quite a lot. Now, as you can see, I'm only level 34 in the Dark Zone. That was very close, and that means that I'm nowhere near the top of the Dark Zone. The top level in the Dark Zone is 99, and there are quite a few people which are already level 99 in the Dark Zone. So, I'm not a huge PvP player in the Division, but I have played a substantial amount, enough to be able to generate an opinion. And at launch, the Dark Zone was horrendous. You could play it, but you had to play it in a team, and you couldn't trust anybody. And if you went rogue, which is one of the main selling points, going rogue, betraying everybody else that's in your server as such, you wouldn't really it wouldn't really turn out particularly well for you, because if you died, you would lose 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,000 6,000 XP points. And yeah, I understand why you lose XP, however, that's a substantial amount, and you could go down 2 levels sometimes by going down and losing that amount of XP. Now, the Dark Zone has been improved a lot since then. Now, I believe, obviously depends on the ratio and things like that, but I believe you can lose about up to 2,000 depending on what you're doing. And I'm fairly impressed with it. And as you can see, getting rogue enemies is fairly complicated still, because you do have that kind of like I wanted again. But you still need to do it, but it's a lot easier than it was before because they're a little bit weaker and you don't risk much so more people go rogue. I mean, I personally think that there are still improvements for the Dark Zone, because
leaving contaminated area.
It's very hard to get the gear that people want to get, and there is quite a large barrier between the players that have put hundreds of hours into the Dark Zone and people that have played 30 hours of the Dark Zone, or even in some cases less. Even though you do have the Dark Zone brackets, which I believe are based upon gear score and Dark Zone level, like a mixture of the two, it's still fairly hard to get the high-end gear that people go into the Dark Zone to get. There is pretty much no point going into the Dark Zone unless you want to troll people and kill people so they can't extract their loot, or if they want to get high-end gear. Getting the high-end gear can sometimes be fairly hard. So, I think that the way that they have balanced the amount of XP that you lose when you go rogue has been done very well. However, I think that the amount of the amount of grind that you have to put into the game to be able to get the stuff that people go into the Dark Zone for is substantial. Now, I've played quite a bit of the Division. I've played almost 8 days in total since launch, and I've played through the whole of the campaign, and I've played a substantial amount of the Dark Zone, and I have not got anywhere near the strongest character in the game. If you have a look right now, my character is fairly weak. 75,000 primary DPS, 71,000 secondary, and 38,000 sidearm, along with 311,000 toughness, just over 3k stamina, well under 1,000 electronics, as in 500, and firearms being 1,500. Now, that is a fairly weak build, especially for PvP. PvE is a lot easier, and it feels a lot more fun as well, because you're not restricted the way that you are with the PvP. Because with the way that it works, there are so many different zones that even if you have the AI enemies that you will eventually get to at some point, where you will most likely have all of this awesome loot drop from, the high-end, top-of-the-range gear only drops at the top ends. So there are different brackets. You obviously start off with the first bracket, and then you can go all the way up to, I believe, DZ06, I believe, and then there'll probably be more zones added in the future. But then you also have the kind of like level-based system where you will have different Dark Zone levels which affect what level players you play against. Now, this is the main factor as to what difficulty level of enemies you get, but the higher number of brackets that you have gone up to, the harder the enemies, and the I think the way that they have done it is, if you have a look at the map here, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When you're in Dark Zone 1, you're going to be placed against weak AI enemies and similar level players of your multiplayer players. So there are different brackets, so it's 161 to 200 for me at the moment, and that's based off gear score. But the higher you go up into the different Dark Zone brackets, the harder the enemies get, but you will not necessarily be able to avoid the people with the high DPS. Because even though the people with the high DPS will be the people risking it going into the high-end areas of the Dark Zone. So, example, I'm on the boundary of DZ03 and 4 here, and it's saying it's hard, and it's probably going to be fairly difficult for me. Now, I could go into it, because I am level 34, so I would, in theory, be perfectly fine. But it ends up getting more and more difficult the higher into the brackets you go, which is understandable. However, for you to get that high-end gear, people need to risk going into the higher levels to be able to get the gear that they want, to be able to complete the incursions and things like that. I haven't actually managed to complete either of the 2 incursions because I don't have the gear score that people look for when you're doing it, because my DPS isn't high enough, my weapons aren't good enough. Now, my gear score right now is 171. A lot of people look for 190, and I believe the maximum is about 250. I'm not 100% sure on that, but everybody looks for something higher than 190 for these incursions. Even though I'm meeting the base requirements, and I'm a little bit over the base requirements for the Falcon's Lost incursion at least, I've still not managed to do it because people won't accept. And for me to be able to do it, you're kind of like stuck. You want to progress with the storyline campaign side of the game, but you can't because you're told, hey, you've got to play the multiplayer for you to be able to progress. I understand the reason why they've done that, because that is the way that they want the game to be played, because it is a MMO. You're supposed to be playing against other people, you're supposed to be doing co-op. It's perfectly understandable. However, it would be nice if there were some slightly easier ways of getting these gear sets for people that might not necessarily have hundreds of hours or tens of hours to sink into the game. Now, the campaign is a really good campaign in my opinion, but the gear that you can get from it, you're very limited as to what you can do. For you to be able to buy the decent gear, for you to be able to make progress, you need to have the Dark Zone Phoenix credits available, you need to be able to have a high enough Dark Zone level. For you to be able to increase that, you need to upload a lot of the Dark Zone. But some people don't want to play the Dark Zone. So I think that a way that they could possibly improve it is possibly have some more things in the PvP area where you can just make progress however you wish. That would definitely be interesting, seeing if they possibly add some more missions into the game. Why the fuck is he shot at me? I think he thought I was going to cut the rope. I did contemplate it, to be honest. But you have a look at the PvE area. You could make so much more progress with it by simply going to like side missions and completing the large missions to be able to get some decent weapons. So if you could do like these high value targets and things like that straight away in the game, that would be insane, because you could get this gear sets and things like that through the PvE area, and it would feel a lot more balanced. In terms of the Dark Zone multiplayer, I think that, yeah, they've been making progress. I want to see some more variety in the gameplay. It's very repetitive. You're going in, grinding out, making sure that you don't get betrayed and you don't betray people, and you're trying to get the best gear. Everybody has the same objective. Not many people go rogue, and the mini games that you have inside, like Manhunt and things like that, are pretty much redundant at this moment in time, because there's no point going Manhunt, at least in the lower Dark Zone areas, because you just don't have the weapons and you're not going to be able to kill anybody when you go rogue.
Attention.
So
Hazard levels normal.
It also, in some aspects, limits you to what achievements you can get as well, because a lot of the achievements are based around the Dark Zone. And I'm not complaining about the Dark Zone because of like achievements and stuff like that, but to have so much time to dedicate to it is something that a lot of people, I think, will find. Obviously, it's a game which primarily focuses on multiplayer, and you do have to grind it out. That is part of the like whole design of the game, but it's just a shame that they haven't managed to implement a system where people that don't like multiplayer parts of the game or just feel like doing it in single player could still do something and get the gear score. I mean, it would be awesome if you could possibly go into the menus and opt out of the multiplayer option, or you could go into a friendly kind of like area. So for example, you could go into single player version of the Dark Zone. Now this is just a rough idea, something coming off the top of my head. I know it might not necessarily work, but would I can imagine having a Dark Zone area which drops high level loot, which drops gear sets, requires a higher amount of work to get the gear sets out, and you work in a team to extract it all. That's the concept behind the Dark Zone after all. However, would you be able to possibly do it so that you can still do it single player in the Dark Zone, extract the good loot, etc., but you have the ability to team up with teammates or go into a like friendly only server. You work in a team to extract the loot, but you still have the basic principle behind the Dark Zone of extracting contaminated loot, grinding to get those kills, to get the loot, etc. But you can't be killed by other multiplayer people. Now, I do understand people are going to complain about that because it isn't really what the game is about. However, it would be nice to have that option for people that might not necessarily want to go in a PvP area, but they still want to progress in the game by doing incursions. Or they just want to do something in co-op similar to the rest of the game, where you can just go into a game world with a friend, muck about, complete the missions, and kill enemies. Now, in some ways you can already do this by getting loot through the base part of the game, by doing missions, doing them on challenging mode, etc. However, the difference with doing them on challenging mode and just by wandering around the streets as such, is you're not going to get as much good gear as you would in a Dark Zone as quickly. You will be able to get that decent gear, of course, they're not going to be stopping you. However, it takes a hell of a lot longer time to be able to do it in the PvE area. So it would definitely be interesting to see what they do with the future DLCs and the future updates like 1.3 and the DLC which is coming out next month, the first paid DLC, and it will be interesting to see what extra content they add in maps. Now, as you can see here, I'm in the PvE area, and I just killed a level 25 enemy, I believe, and it dropped me a green item. And I'm a fairly high level, so, well, I'm level cap in PvE, so that's a disappointing thing, because you're so limited as to, like, you go into the PvE to grind out killing enemies and things like that because you don't want to go in multiplayer, but then you get rewarded with shit even though you're a high level. Now, I am in a fairly low level area actually at the moment, so that might make sense, but I've experienced that all across the map. So it'll be interesting to see what they would do with post-launch DLC content. We will be having a debrief of what has happened at E3 regarding The Division as a separate video to the rest of Ubisoft stuff, and we have done predictions of The Division future content and talking about The Division as a whole in the future and what I thought of The Division and things. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, follow, and of course, as always, subscribe. It's very much appreciated. We will be seeing you in the next video. I'm going to try and do a challenging mode on The Division with my friends right now, and we're going to hopefully upload that to YouTube this week, possibly next week, depending when we get it recorded. But that would definitely be some fun to try and get a high enough level for this incursion that we want to be doing. So that's Close Sky and Falcon Lost. So we'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching, and yeah, don't forget to check out our Mirror's Edge Catalyst walkthrough, which we've been doing over the past week or two. We've got some more videos on that coming up as well once the game is fully released. See you soon.